Warning! I will be comparing this to Smash Brothers. A lot. During the week of E3, PlayStation was having a big E3 2012 sale in which they put the best of show games from last year's E3 on sale. And some of these games included Dishonored, Tomb Raider, Far Cry 3, and PlayStation All-Stars. $40 cut down to $14. Yeah, I'm taking it. So now I'm here to review PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. An executive at Sony said to himself, what would it be like if Sweet Tooth went up against Kratos from God of War, or if Nathan Drake from Uncharted went up against Sly Cooper? And some other guy said, dude, they already did that, it's called Smash Brothers. But this is PlayStation, I mean, come on. But okay, let's make it anyway. PlayStation All-Stars takes most of the iconic characters from Sony's exclusives, such as Nathan Drake from Uncharted, Kratos from God of War, Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, and puts them in an open-stage brawler that borrows heavily from the mechanics of Super Smash Bros., but takes them and, adds a few tweaks here and there to make the game not only, a little bit different than the conventional Super Smash Bros. Game, but also make it fun and easy to get hooked on. And the choices they made with the character roster are from one extreme to the other, much like Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And what I like to do is to separate them into 4 different categories. You got the easy giveaways, Kratos, Sweet Tooth, Cole from Infamous, the guys that you would expect from PlayStation signature franchises to be in the fighting game. And then you got the in-betweeners, which are the characters that you weren't expecting to be in the game, but when you do play as them, you're kind of happy with them and you accept them to be in a fighting game, like Nathan Drake, or Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Radic. You got the what the fuck category, which is of course the characters that you look at and go, why? Parappa the Rapper, Fat Princess, that Super Saiyan wannabe with the monkey. You had plenty of other opportunities to make deals with other companies to nab other characters like Mega Man and Spyro, and you had to settle with Toro. And the last category, as I like to call it, the promotion category. At the time that this game came out, the reboot for Devil May Cry and the spin-off game off of Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, were not out yet, so their respective companies said to Sony, hey, you got a crossover fighting game coming up? We'll let you use our characters. I mean, it's not like we got a game coming out soon. By the way, here's the version of the character we want you to use. And I do understand that they released 4 other playable characters as the DLC, but the fact that they're DLC makes them a little less appealing. And here's the thing that I'm hoping they do should they make a sequel, which I'll talk about in greater detail at the end of this video. But I wish that in the sequel they save some of these characters, that if they're working on more characters for this game as of right now for DLC, stop. And when I say stop, don't stop developing those characters to be those playable characters, but just stop making them DLC and just save them for the sequel. And to better things off, don't make them DLC, make them as unlockable characters. If you're gonna copy an awful lot of elements from Smash Brothers, then copy an element that I think will have you build a stronger fan base for this franchise, and that is to take your unlockable characters and make them unlockable characters rather than DLC. Integrate them into the actual game and make them unlockable characters every time you beat a certain opponent using a specific character, or beating the arcade mode with a specific setting on, or under a certain time, that sort of thing. And while earning, the default trophies that most PlayStation games have, you also get to unlock these characters, and it just gives the game a whole new merit and just a better quality value to the game. So if you add unlockable characters to the original game instead of making them DLC, you'll have an even better package. And if you're not used to non-traditional fighters, don't worry, this game makes sure that you learn all the mechanics step by step via a tutorial before you actually able to access the main modes of this game. And some of the mechanics are a little bit easy, and some are different than, like I said, than your traditional fighters. The square button is your heavy attack, your triangle button is your slightly lighter attack, and your circle button has some attacks based on some of the modifiers by pressing up, down, left, or right on your D-pad or the control stick, but when you press circle by itself, it's mostly a defense mechanic, for most characters at least, and the only way to jump is to press X rather than to pressing up in the directional pad or the left analog stick. And when you press up on the analog stick or D-pad, all it does is modify your attacks. So I'll admit, when I started playing, it's a little jarring at first, but after literally about, maybe 5-10 minutes, you'll get it. Every time you manage to hit your opponent, you gain AP. Can't remember what AP means. What I do know is that AP fills up your special meter, and when your special meter is full, you can pull off a special attack using the R2 trigger. There's a total of 3 levels, so when you reach level 1, you can continue gaining AP, and you can reach level 2, and then then you can continue to gain more AP, and you can reach level 3. And of course, every higher level of a special attack is stronger than the one before. But of course, after every level, it becomes a little harder and harder to gain AP. It doesn't fill up as fast. And here's the nice little twist to make itself a little bit different than these Smash Brothers games. In the Smash Brothers games, you have to have your opponent reach a specific percentage in order to be able to knock him or her off the stage and out into the borders to kill your opponent. Here, the only way to kill your opponent is to execute them via a special attack. And it becomes a bit of a cat and mouse sort of game, even though that's not unlike Smash Brothers. Here, when everybody has reached either the level 1 or level 2 special attack meter, then it becomes a very intricate game of trying to outrun somebody while at the same time trying to catch them in that specific time and specific place to press the R2 trigger and pull off your special attack. Level 3 is the rewarding one. When you reach level 3 and you pull off your special attack, most of the time you can kill all your opponents on the stage, and it's one of the more marvelous looking special attacks that you can pull off depending on your character. And throughout combat, you can pick up items that you can use against your opponent, and some of these items were made for the sake of the game. They don't belong in any other franchise, and others you'll be able to recognize, like, okay, that's from God of War, or that's from Devil May Cry. And yes, it's also kind of borrowed from Smash Brothers, but hey, it's essential during combat, and it definitely helps out when I'm getting my ass kicked. And it's fun, what can I say? Yeah, it does borrow some mechanics from Smash Brothers, but more thought was put into it rather than just copy and paste like, I don't know, Call of Duty does. Here, it just feels like it was a bit of a side project that somebody came up with, but at the same time, it's something that they said, you know what, I want to put more attention to this. I don't want it to just be a copy and paste and be referred to as simply just a copycat. I want to make a genuinely good game. And you can tell that they put some thought into some of the gameplay mechanics and make sure that the collision system is all correct and make sure that it's not as buggy as some copycat games tend to be. And they made sure that the fighting style is fun. And apart from that, they make sure that not every fighting style is a replicant of the other character that is next to them, like Smash Brothers tended to do a little bit, especially during Super Smash Brothers Melee, where you got Ganondorf and Captain Falcon right next to each other. And when you played as Ganondorf, once you unlocked him, you can tell his fighting style is exactly the same as Captain Falcon. Here, they made the fighting styles different enough to suit to each character and make sure that it applied to that character suitably. For example, Big Daddy, he's heavy, he's huge, so obviously he's going to have an awful lot of powerful attacks, but he's not going to be quick, he's going to be a little bit slow upon the stage. When you got smaller characters like, say, Fat Princess or Parappa the Rapper, I can't believe I just said that. They're gonna tend to be a little bit quicker. I mean, I gotta admit, I underestimated Parappa just a tiny bit. I'm a bit of a fan pressing the square button repeatedly and having Parappa do that, rapid fire punch attack in order to gain AP really quickly and pull off a special attack. And much like an awful lot of fighters, depending on how you play, depending on which character you like, and you're probably not gonna figure that out until you played through, every character and you played as every character. You will then figure out, okay, I like to play as this character, I like to play like that. Kind of like how I felt with Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which is another crossover fighting game. You play as every character, and then you'll find which one you're comfortable with. Will say I'm not a huge fan of Raditz. I'm not a huge fan of some of these characters that they gave them guns because aiming is not particularly a big gameplay mechanic that you would use in a fighting game. Me personally, I like to use an awful lot of fast characters like Raiden or Dante, and be able to use some of their quick attacks to be able to gain AP faster and pull off special attacks faster and more frequently. So characters like Big Daddy I'm not a huge fan of. Raditz I'm not particularly fond of because he uses more bombs and grenades and his gun, and sometimes I don't know, I'm just personally not a fan. I'm not saying that the gameplay mechanics are wonky with his character, it's just a matter of taste. And I respect the game for that because it just clearly shows that the developers put thought into the way this game works and the way this game plays. My main complaint with the combat is that sometimes it's a little unbalanced when it comes to its variety within the character roster. Here's an example. I played as Kratos and then as Ratchet, or as I like to call it, Ratchet and Clank, because I feel a little comfortable excluding Clank from the whole mix. So I like to call him as Ratchet and Clank rather than just Ratchet, like I like to call Jak and Daxter, instead of just Jack. They're a team, they're a duo, I just can't separate bros like that. But anyways, I played as those two characters back to back. And Kratos has enough strong attacks throughout his square, triangle, and circle buttons that I was able to take those attacks and mix different combos in order to generate enough AP to fill up my meter and to pull off my super attacks to kill my opponents. Now with Ratchet and Clank, however, their moveset is significantly different, of course catering to the kind of character that he is, but I just wasn't comfortable with it, and some of his attacks throughout his triangle and circle buttons were extremely weak to where I had to find a particular combo throughout his square attacks and include maybe a triangle or circle attack here and there, that when I found that combo, I just had to repeat that combo over and over and over again until I was eventually able to fill up my super meter and pull off a super attack to kill my opponent. And that causes the gameplay to be just a tiny bit repetitive with some characters. Now this may be a personal thing, it might be just my personal taste as to how I feel about characters such as Ratchet and Clank or Jak and Daxter or Toro or Parappa, whatever, but let me know what you guys thought. If you guys did play the game, did you feel like that gameplay was just a little unbalanced when it came to some of the fighting styles these characters had? Because there were moments where I felt like I was just doing the same combo over and over in order to fill up my meter. But where with characters like Sweet Tooth or Kratos or some of the stronger, more durable characters, they had bigger range of attack, so I was able to fill up my meter faster. One of the things that I can commend this game for are the stages that you fight on. A lot of detail were put into some of these stages, and they're taken right out of the games that these characters come from, with one or two stages like the Resistance stage, which of course there's no character from the Resistance franchise in this game fighting, but I like that they took a signature a stage from a signature franchise and they put it in here. And what makes these stages a little better than the ones from Smash Bros. Is the fact that they're very interactive. A lot of things are happening in the background that interact with the combat that's happening on stage, and along with that, it changes as the fight goes on. After some time, some other character or element or whatever will come in from another video game franchise and clash with something that's happening in the background. And it's just charming and fun to see that happening in the background while you're trying to duke it out with your opponents. And the fact that those elements are clashing with the actual combat that's happening on stage, it just makes it all the more fun. And speaking of the developers, a lot of developers made this game. I turned it on and it was just logo after logo. Blue Point Games, Superbot Entertainment, Santa Monica Studios. And there's moments in the game where you can kind of tell that different studios worked on different portions of the game. That's not to say that it's disjointed. For the most part, it's a little seamless. But those seams show here and there. Like for example, since Santa Monica Studios had some involvement in the game, Kratos is going to look amazing, and his cutscenes during his story mode, which I'll get to in a second, look great. But then you look at Nathan Drake. I gotta be honest, out of all the character models in this game, Nathan Drake is, in my opinion, the worst. Everybody looks good, everybody looks like they were taken out of the game, but Nathan Drake looks like the action figure of Nathan Drake. Now his eyebrows are over here, his hair is bigger than it usually is in the Uncharted games, and I could just tell that maybe he was at the very end of the development stage after they have already completed rendering all the other character models. And what was also probably left at the end of the development stage is some of the menus. The music is cool, the announcer voice, has a nice dynamic feel to it that gets me excited, but what would have made me more excited to play the game is to have some sort of visual flair that made me go, yes, I'm ready to kick some ass! But instead we get box, box, rectangle, box, blue background. Come on, Superbot, spice things up a little bit. Which brings me to some of the modes this game has. You got your basic arcade mode, in which you can play through the story mode of every character. And the term story is used very loosely. Basically what it is you have a cutscene at the beginning of the story mode and then at the end. And in the middle you got, again, another replicant of the Super Smash Bros. Solo campaign, in which after you have this cutscene that kind of starts to tell this nice little story about the character that you selected, which is told through these cutscenes that are told with this artwork, just simply panning and scanning and zooming in. There's no actual animation, there's no actual cutscene, but I will admit that some of those cutscenes, they use some really great artwork, and they're very attentive to detail. Like for example, some of the God of War artwork that they use during these cutscenes during Kratos' story is very detailed and very, artistic. It looks like something that they used in the concept artwork for some of the God of War games. But when you would play as, say, Sly Cooper, he was cel-shaded. He was cel-shaded like he was in these Sly Cooper games. And some of the voice work in these cutscenes is actually quite good. So I like that they paid attention to some of the details from their respective games. But after that, you just go through wave and wave of opponents. You start off with 1, 2, 3, they change the settings, you know, they make it a little bit tougher. Obviously the difficulty gets a little stronger until eventually you reach your, I like to call, rival. This rival is foreshadowed in the cutscene, and he or she has some sort of connection with the story that is introduced at the beginning of this story mode. And half of these are kind of clever, you know, I like how they tied these two characters together, and then the other half, they just feel a little forced. And then after that, you have the final boss fight, Polygon Man, or as I like to think of, PlayStation All-Star's answer to the Hand from Super Smash Bros. And Polygon Man, or at least that's his nickname, I don't know what his official name is, but I'm just gonna call him Polygon Man. He's not the most original boss battle you will encounter. Then you got the closing cutscene that ties everything together, and you got yourself a trophy. Rinse and repeat for every single story mode for every single character. And I'll admit, you know, it's fun to play through 2 or 3 story modes for 2 or 3 different characters when you boot up the game, and it's nice to see, you know, the little cutscenes, you know, try to guess, oh, who's gonna be their rival, who are they gonna fight towards the end, you know, what's the type of animations they use in the opening and closing cutscenes. But after a while, it just gets so repetitive, and I get tired of hearing Polygon Man say his same lines of dialogue over and over again, that this is the type of story mode that you play 2 or 3 times during every play session, and then you just have to put it away for at least a day, and it isn't until the next day or 2 that you finally go, okay, I want to beat through this story mode, oh, I want to play as him or her, whatever, and then, again, rinse and repeat. Other modes in this game include the obligatory versus. You can either fight the computer or fight up to 3 MCPs or up to 3 other players, either locally or online. There's a tournament mode that starts at every 30 days, and it's your basic tournament mode like you would expect. And you also have combat trials in which you either take the general list of missions that are assigned to you, and you know, you're assigned a specific character, and you have to pull off this certain level type of instructions, like defeat this enemy only using a level 1 special attack or something like that. Or you can take on specific character combat trials and complete them, and this is mostly, like I said, something for you to do when you get tired of the arcade mode, or you get tired of you know, playing multiplayer online, or you know, versus or something like that. And, you know, it's a nice little time spender, and it's a nice little opportunity to gain some more trophies if you're into that. And playing through all these different modes, you can rank up your characters, and I'm not noticing a huge difference in, you know, their strength or their defense or their health or their speed, stuff like that. I'm not noticing a huge difference, but you do get to rank them up. And ranking them up unlocks different things like icons, backgrounds, victory music, intro and outro music, and also different taunts. And you can use these things to customize those characters. Now, when I say customization, I don't know, it's not the most intricate, you know, form of customization you've seen in a fighting game. Like you get to level their strength and their defense. Like I said before, you don't get to do that. It's just a matter of nice little things that you can do to change up your character, to change how he or she enters the stage, and you know, nice little things like that that are a little bit fun to unlock, but it's mainly for the completists. It's mainly for people who like to unlock all these different trophies and defeat all these combat trials. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale reminds me of the case of when Saints Row, the first Saints Row came out. Everybody was bashing it for being a GTA ripoff, but then people played it and said, okay, yeah, it is a GTA ripoff, but we're still having fun, and you know that you had fun playing it. PlayStation All-Stars borrows heavily from Super Smash Bros. That it could be condemned by some people to be a ripoff of Super Smash Bros. But it is really fun. You know, it's very fun, and I really want to say very inoffensive, to where I'm actually willing to respect the work that was put into this game, or the sufficient amount of work that was put into it, to say that, yeah, it has its flaws, and it's far from perfect, but I respect it enough to say that I actually kind of hope that the fact that it's called PlayStation All-Stars and then you got the subtitle Battle Royale means that there's going to be a sequel with a different subtitle. And hopefully in the sequel they could fix some of the flaws from the first game and incorporate some more characters, fix some of the gameplay fighting styles that I wasn't particularly a fan of. And that's just my personal opinion. And hopefully make a better fighting game. And hopefully they, you know, PlayStation could have another hit franchise on their hands. And please, Fix Nathan Drake. I give PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale an 8.4 out of 10, which is a B. Should they develop a franchise, I hope it deviates away from being considered a ripoff and more of a worthy competitor to the Super Smash Bros. Franchise. Thank you guys for watching. Battle Royale!